Rain should have been falling clean, cold, and familiar, but by the time it reached the crypt headstones, it had turned to drifting flecks of ash. They clung to Alara's lashes as she stood over the raw earth, her fingers trembling around the wilted flowers she had gathered at dawn. The air tasted of smoke and sorrow, as if the sky itself mourned with her. The last shovel of dirt thudded over her mother's coffin. A hollow sound. A final one. Alara didn't cry, not in front of the villagers who lingered only out of duty. Her grief sat deeper than tears, lodged like a stone in her chest. She lowered her head, letting the ash settle into her dark hair, and breathed in the cold, brittle air. That was when she sensed him. A figure stood apart from the thinning crowd. Where the fog swirled thickest, tall, too tall, pale as new frost. His posture held a quiet command, as if he belonged to some distant world untouched by mud and mourning. And his eyes, garnet dark, even in daylight, watched her with a sorrow more intimate than any stranger should possess. She blinked, certain she imagined him. But the villagers noticed too, whispering behind gloved hands, "Who is he? Never seen him before. Doesn't look like he comes from any place around here." Yet no one approached him. No one dared. Alara's heart skittered. Something in his gaze, ancient, resigned, pulled at her, like a memory she had never lived. When he inclined his head, it wasn't a greeting. It was a silent apology. She swallowed hard. Her boots squelched in the wet soil as she stepped away from the grave, away from the murmurs, toward the stranger who should not have cared enough to watch her mother's burial. The fog thickened around him, as if eager to hide him. Still, she pushed forward, breath shallow. "Wait," she managed, voice barely carrying. "Why were you at my mother's funeral?" He didn't move. Not at first. Then a ripple passed through the air settle, almost imperceptible, and the space where he stood wavered like disturbed water. By the time she reached it, he was gone. No footsteps. No silhouette fading into the trees. No sound. Just the fog curling around an empty patch of earth, as if swallowing a secret hole. Alara's pulse hammered. No man could disappear like that. And yet he had. Asterisk, asterisk. Alara pushed open the warped wooden door, and the cottage greeted her with its usual hush-dim, crumbling, smelling faintly of damp earth and old smoke. Only tonight something felt wrong. The shadows were too still, the silence too watchful. She stepped inside, closing the door against the moaning wind. A single candle flickered on the table, its flame bending as though disturbed by a breath not her own. Alara's skin prickled. She wasn't alone. A figure separated from the darkness. He stood beside the hearth tall, pale and impossibly composed, as though the shadows had shaped themselves into the stranger she had seen in the cemetery. His presence pressed against the small room, elegant yet unervingly predatory. His eyes, deep and wine-dark, shimmered with an emotion she couldn't name, sorrow, intertwined with something sharper, something hungry. "You shouldn't be alone tonight," he said softly. His voice carried warmth, but beneath it ran a current that raised goosebumps along her arms. Alara stumbled back a step, heart thudding wildly. How did you get in here?" He didn't answer. He simply watched her, gaze tracing her features with unsettling familiarity, as if he had known her once, as if he was trying to remember how. "I asked you a question," she whispered, forcing strength into her shaking voice. "Who are you?" His expression tightened, a flicker of regret crossing his face. He took a slow step forward, not threatening, yet every instinct in her body trembled, torn between fear and a strange pull toward him. A pull that felt older than the night itself. Alara. He breathed, and she froze. He shouldn't have known her name. He parted his lips as if to speak the truth at last. A thunderous knock slammed into the cottage door. The wood rattled. Dust fell from the beams. Then another strike, violent, urgent. "Wrong." Alara's breath caught in her throat. Something dangerous was on the other side. And it wanted and dot asterisk asterisk the door shuddered again, this time with a crack that splintered the wood. A guttural snarl seeped through the widening gap, low and ravenous, raising every hair on Alara's body. She backed away until the cold stone wall pressed into her spine. The stranger stepped forward, no hesitation. No fear. A final blow smashed the latch, and the door burst inward. What crawled through was wrong too long in the limbs, too sharp in the teeth, its eyes glowing the sickly gold of starving madness. Not wolf, not man. Something torn between it sniffed the air. Then its head snapped toward Alara. The stranger moved before the beast finished its snarl. One moment he stood still. The next he was a blur of pale fury, placing himself in front of her with a protectiveness that felt ancient. "Stay behind me," he commanded, voice ringing with authority that shook the room. "You are protected by decree? Decree?" Alara didn't dare ask. The creature lunged. He met it head on, claws raked toward him, but he caught the creature's wrist mid-swipe, twisting until bone cracked. The beast screamed. With inhuman speed, he drove his other hand into its chest, no weapon, only bare fingers that tore through flesh as though it were wet parchment. Blood sprayed across the floor in dark arcs, glistening like black ink under moonlight. Alara bit back a cry. Horror tangled with disbelief. No human could move like this. No human could kill like this. The creature staggered, shrieking, then fled into the night, leaving a path of dark droplets across the threshold. Only when its howls faded did Alara realize she'd been holding her breath. The stranger now. Not a stranger anymore turned toward her. Crimson streaked his hands, dripping from elegant fingers that should have belonged to royalty. Not a murderer, his voice softened. "My name is Valerius." A pause, heavy with centuries. "King of the Nocturnal Vampires?" Alara's knees threatened to give way. A tremor escaped her lips. Vampire king," she whispered. "Here for me?" Asterisk, asterisk, the cottage still smelled of blood and broken wood, but Valerius's voice carried a steadier, quieter storm. "Your mother made a vow," he said, his crimson-stained hands slowly lowering to his sides. "A vow that bound you to my kingdom long before you were born?" Alara shook her head at once. "No, she would have told me. She kept it hidden to protect you." His gaze softened, but the weight behind it was ancient. "A blood decree. A pact that ties your life to ours, to mine. And now that your existence is no longer concealed, enemies of the throne will hunt you." Tonight was only the first. The room swayed around her. The world she'd clung to, humble, quiet, small fractured like thin ice beneath the sudden step. Her mother, gentle and tired, but always honest, had carried a secret sharp enough to carve fate. "I don't accept this," Alara whispered, tears burning her eyes. "I won't let some vow decide who I am." Valerius stepped closer, slow enough not to startle her. "Defiance does not free you," he murmured. "It only paints a clearer target on your back." The frustration in his tone softened to something more fragile. "Regret, shame. If I could free you from this oath, I would." Her breath hitched. The tears she'd fought since the funeral finally slipped free, and she pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. Something in his expression cracked an ache flickering through his dark eyes, as if her pain wounded him too. He reached out. A single fingertip touched her cheek, cold as moonlit stone, but beneath that cold, a pulse. Warmth bloomed against her skin. Faint but unmistakable. Wrong. Impossible. Alara's breath stuttered. Valerius froze as if he felt it too. She jerked back, heart slamming against her ribs, terror slicing through her. That warmth, whatever it was, could not mean anything good. Alara backed away until her shoulder hit the stone wall. The warmth still tingled on her cheeks, subtle, haunting. Wrong and Valerius watched her as though the moment had shifted something neither of them could undo. That heat you felt, he said quietly, is the first spark of a blood memory awakening. Alara's pulse stumbled. What? A legacy sealed into you by your mother, he continued, stepping into a shaft of moonlight that cut across the room. The crimson on his hands darkened to black. She carried the same imprint. It lies dormant until touched by one bound to the vow. Alara shook her head, breath trembling. My mother she wasn't some ancient being. She was barely 40. She lived her whole life in this village. Valerius's eyes softened, the garnet in them dimming into something mournful. She saved my life centuries ago. Alara stared at him, stunned. That's impossible. For humans, perhaps, he answered, voice low, almost reverent with memory. But for those tied to the Nocthril throne, time is not a single river. It bends, it loops, it hides what must be hidden. Her stomach tightened, a dread that felt like someone pulling old threads loose inside her. Her mother had never spoken of traveling, of magic, of anything beyond the small, weary life they shared. Had her entire existence been crafted around a lie? Around protection? No, Alara whispered, shaking her head harder. You're lying. You have to be. Valerius flinched as if the denial struck him. True pain flashed in his eyes, raw and unmasked for a heartbeat. And in that flicker, she saw something else. Knowledge. Heavy, terrible knowledge. He knew how her mother died. He had known from the moment he stood at the funeral. Alara's grief surged into fury. She stepped forward despite the danger, voice breaking. Tell me, she demanded, hands trembling at her sides. Tell me everything you're hiding. Asterisk, asterisk, the candle burned low, its flame whispering against the silence as Valerius closed his eyes, gathering a truth that seemed to weigh centuries. When he opened them again, the shadows in the room felt thinner, as though the night itself was listening. Your mother was not the woman she pretended to be, he said softly. Alara's breath hitched. Don't you dare. She was a bloodkeeper, he continued, voice steady but filled with a sorrow she had never heard from him before. A mortal entrusted with the oldest secrets of our kind, secrets that could unmake kingdoms. Alara shook her head, but her body had gone cold. Her mother, who mended torn clothes by candlelight, who sang old lullabies, was shaking hands guardian of Forbidden's vampire lore. It felt absurd, impossible. Yet something inside her recognized the truth like a wound reopening. She died because she protected you, Valerius said. Enemies of the Nocthril throne sought the dormant power in your blood. The power she hid so fiercely, they murdered her to reach you. He took a slow step closer, his expression gentler than she had ever seen it. Your mother chose love over duty, again and again. The words crushed her. Alara folded her arms around herself, fighting the tremor crawling up her spine. So it's my fault, she whispered. She died because of me. No. The denial escaped him with sudden force, his composure cracking. She died for you. There's a difference. His sincerity startled her, the raw ache, the reverence when he spoke of her mother. Not the voice of a king or a monster, but a man who had known loss intimately. He lowered his gaze as if revealing a final confession. Before she died, she came to me. She begged me to protect you, a beat, even if it cost you your heart. The candle flickered violently, throwing his face into shifting planes of shadow and pale resolve. Alara's voice trembled as her stomach tightened with dread. Why my heart? Asterisk, asterisk, the room seemed to shrink around them, the shadows drawing close as if eager to eavesdrop on a secret too dangerous to speak aloud. Valerius held her gaze, the weight of centuries pressing behind his eyes, the bond between. U.S., he said slowly, was sealed long before your first breath. When your mother spilled royal blood to save my life, She invoked an ancient law. A bloodkeeper who preserves the throne binds her lineage to it, forever. Alara's heart stumbled painfully. Bound? How? Our lives are linked, he answered. Your life force connected to mine. If one falls, the other follows. He spoke it like a sentence, not a gift. Alara felt heat flood her face, anger, betrayal, terror all at once. So my future was decided for me, without my say, without even my knowledge. He flinched, truly flinched. I never wanted to claim you. His voice dropped to a rough whisper. I avoided this place for as long as I could. I hoped the bond would never awaken. I hoped you would live untouched by the shadows of my world. Then break it, she demanded, voice cracking. If you don't want this, if I don't want this, end it. A hollow silence followed. He turned away as if the admission shamed him. I cannot, he said. To sever the bond is to sever life, yours. Or mine. It would destroy us both. The fury inside her twisted into something softer, something she hated herself for feeling. Sympathy, the way he spoke, the fracture in his voice. He had been carrying this burden alone for far too long. She opened her mouth to speak too, lash out or to understand. She wasn't sure, but the candle sputtered, its flame thinning as the darkness in the corners of the cottage stirred. Not wind, not creature dot movement dot a ripple of something alive. Alara stiffened, the hairs on her arms rising. Valerius stepped closer, instinct sharpening his posture, predator, protector, king. From the far corner of the room, hidden behind the sagging shelves, a voice like a dry leaf brushing stone whispered, "The girl is awake." Asterisk, asterisk, the whisper had barely finished echoing when Valerius seized Alara's wrist. The world lurched, air rushing, shadows bending as he pulled her through the shuttered doorway and into the night. Don't look back, he murmured, though his voice trembled with urgency. The forest swallowed them whole, branches clawing at the air as if trying to snag their escape. Cold mist slid around their ankles, thickening with every step, until it was hard to tell where the ground ended and the darkness began. Behind them, the hunters emerged. Figures cloaked in shadows, moving without footsteps, their presence felt more than heard. The air around them hummed with killing intent, a sound like knives whispered against bone. Alara stumbled over a root, but Valerius caught her, pulling her against his chest. The moment their bodies touched, something jolt-sharp surged between them, a painful tightening, a pulling. Their heartbeats sensed one rhythm, too fast, too frightened. She gasped. What? What is happening? The bond, he said, voice tight. When you're close to me, it reacts. Focus on breathing. I won't let them take you. The hunters closed in. The mist shifted alive, almost sentient, and Valerius's eyes flared crimson. His power rolled outward in a cold wave, making the trees shudder as if bowing to him. He lifted a hand, fingers curling, and the shadows recoiled as though dragged by an unseen force dot in a single swift sweep. He shattered the encircling darkness. Trees exploded into splinters. The earth trembled. The hunters scattered back, hissing into the mist. Alara stared, breathless. She had feared him. She still did. But the realization struck her like a blade between ribs. He was fighting as if her life was worth more than his own. He was fighting to die for her, if that was the price. They broke. Through the last line of fog, stumbling into a hollow where the moonlight actually reached the ground. Valerius exhaled, tension easing just enough that she felt his grip loosen. Here, he said, just a moment. A sharp hiss cut through the air. Alara didn't see the arrow until after it hit. Streak of moon silver glinting with lethal purity pierced, straight through Valerius's chest. He staggered, breath catching, eyes wide with a pain that seemed to tear the night open. Valerius, she cried, reaching for him. He crumpled forward, collapsing into her arms as the mist closed in once more. Asterisk, asterisk. Alara lowered him to the damp forest floor, her hands shaking as the moon-silver arrow pulsed like living fire in his chest. Smoke curled from the wound, then ghostly wisps rising from burning flesh. Valerius's breath hitched, uneven, torn from him in shallow gasps. "Stay with me," she whispered, fingers hovering helplessly above the arrow. The metal sizzled where it touched his skin. "Tell me what to do. Tell me how to stop this." His eyes fluttered open, the garnet glow dimming. "Don't pull it yet," he rasped, the words strained. "Moon-silver poisons spreads fast." Alara's panic clawed at her throat. She pressed trembling hands against the wound anyway, trying to staunch the burning that felt like it was searing her palms. "You're losing too much blood, Valerius. You're—" A weak laugh escaped him, more breath than sound. "I've lost worse." But the lie broke as another wave of agony cut through him. His body arched, a strangled groan tearing free before he forced himself still. His hand found hers, cold fingers curling desperately around her wrist. "Alara?" His voice was barely a whisper. "Forgive me. I should have told you everything. I watched over you. Longer than you know." Her breath faltered, watched her, protected her, grieved for her mother beside the grave, with a sorrow that hadn't been for a stranger. "You were there," she murmured, realization cracking her heart open. "Not out of duty. Because you cared." His eyes closed as if her words hurt and soothed him all at once. The bond throbbed through her veins, heat and ice intertwined, pulling her into his pain, his fading heartbeat echoing inside her chest, until she couldn't breathe without feeling him slip. Valerius forced out one final warning, voice raw and breaking. "If I die, you follow." The forest swallowed the last word. Alara lifted her head to the night sky and screamed for help, her voice ripping through the trees like a plea. The darkness might answer. Asterisk, asterisk. The forest pulsed with approaching footsteps, soft, deliberate, predatory. Hunters closing in. Their shadows flickered between the trees like slashes of deeper night, tightening the circle around them. "Alara," Valerius forced out, struggling to rise though the moon-silver arrow burned through his chest. "You need to run." She dropped to her knees beside him and pushed him back down with trembling hands. "I'm not leaving you." "Stop saying that. You must." His voice cracked, terror flickering in his eyes, not for himself, but for her. "They want you. If they take you—" She grabbed his face between her palms, ignoring the cold, ignoring the way their bond shuddered painfully. "Then tell me the truth," she pleaded. "All of it. Why you were there. Why you cared. Why you watched me like you were mourning something I didn't understand. Tell me why you've been guarding me my entire life." Valerius's breath trembled. His eyes, dimmed with pain, lifted to hers as though searching for the strength to say what he'd sworn never to speak aloud. "Alara." He swallowed, blood darkening his lips. "Your mother wasn't only my savior." She froze. She was my beloved. The words hit her like a blade. Her chest stuttered, breath tearing in half. "My mother?" He nodded once, barely. Shame, grief, devotion, every emotion carved through his features until he seemed almost human beneath the centuries. "She bound herself to my world for love. Not power. Not duty. She was fierce, brave, and when she saved my life, she claimed a fragment of my heart in the vow." A fresh wave of agony crossed his face, not from the wound, from memory. "And when she bore you," he continued, "that fragment passed into you. Her dormant power. My heart's echo. That is why they hunt you. Why the bond awakened. Why I—" His voice faltered. "Why I could never stay away." Alara's world crumbled, collapsing inward as her own heartbeat twisted violently with his. She stared at him, her soul tearing open beneath the weight of truths she had never asked for, never wanted. Never imagined. Through the trees, silhouettes emerged, dozens now, surrounding the hollow in a tightening ring. Alara's breath hitched, cold dread traveling up her spine. She understood the choice before her: save the vampire king tied to her life, or save herself from a destiny she never consented to. The hunters stepped closer, and the night held its breath.